Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name's Jessica. This is my colleague Lisa. We're from the Chelmsford Public Library. And this is our second installment of Bookmarked, our book chat television show. Today, we decided to go with a theme. Our library has been engaged in a year-long grant-funded project called REACT. And for September and October, we're investigating the issue of immigration and citizenship. So our books today are a collection of different genres and formats, but they're all kind of focused around this theme of immigration and citizenship. So to get us started, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa for her first book. What'd you bring?
My first book, Jessica, is Pride, Prejudice and Other Flavors by Sonali Dev. Sonali Dev writes contemporary romance novels, and her tagline says, "Everything's with a Bollywood beat." And I would say it is. She has complex characters, complicated family relationships, and often vivid descriptions of food that even if you're not hungry, you get hungry while you're reading them.
That seems to be such an important part of like feel-good romances.
Exactly.
The food element. Yeah.
Exactly. And Pride, Prejudice and Other Flavors, as part of the title implies, is it's actually a retelling of the Jane Austen classic, Pride and Prejudice. So in this case, we have it's taking place in current day San Francisco, California, and you have socially awkward Dr. Trisha Rajay, who comes from a family of wealth, actually a family that was originally ancestrally royal. And she's tops in her field of neurosurgery, but she's actually estranged from her family, and that's due to a mistaken allegiance from her college days that unfurls as the story goes along. Her favorite elder brother, Yash, is currently U.S. Attorney of the Northern District of California, and he's days away from announcing his candidacy for governor. And so Trisha decides that she's gonna attend one of his fundraisers to start to try and build bridges back with her family. And at that event, she meets DJ Kane, who is the chef who has been hired for this one event and is sort of interviewing for future events. And initially, of course, they take an immediate dislike to each other, typical of some enemies to love interest romances. So what's the dilemma? Well, there's multiple dilemmas given the interactions of the different family members and stuff, but the big dilemma is that DJ's younger sister is artist Emma Kane, and she's actually a patient of Trisha's. And she has terminal brain cancer, and she's been told by other surgeons that it is terminal. Emma can actually save her life, but she's gonna go blind as part of the process. And Emma is like, no way, I can't even imagine living my life being blind.
Oh, yeah.
And so they have to put aside their antagonism, Trisha and DJ, and figure out, well, how are we gonna convince Emma to like have this surgery? If you enjoy multicultural romances that are culturally diverse with well-developed characters, romances with lush and vivid descriptions of food, and an enemy to lovers theme, then you're probably gonna enjoy this novel. And if you enjoy adaptations and retellings of things like Pride and Prejudice, I would say you would also probably enjoy Unmarriageable by Sanaya Kamal. As far as author reader likes, you would probably appreciate Jasmine Guillory and Alexa Martin. And I hear, Jessica, that you also have a retelling of Pride and Prejudice to share with us next.
I do, Lisa. Thanks for handing it off. So yeah, I also brought with me a multicultural romance that is based on Pride and Prejudice. It's called Aisha Last, and it's by Usma Jalaluddin. My retelling is based in the suburbs of Toronto, Canada, a Muslim community there. Ayesha and Khalid are both members of this Muslim community. They're probably in their early 30s, but as far as the community is concerned, they're beyond marriageable age. So they're no longer in the market, if you would.
So they're like maid or matrons? Maid or they're just considered
spinster.
old. Spinsters, yeah.
The younger cousin, actually, who is in the market to be married off, considers her the spinster older cousin, yeah. But Ayesha's not into any of this, you know. She's like the Lizzie Bennet. She is she's very strong, intelligent, independent, and doesn't want to have anything to do with this silly auntie business. Khalid is very strict. He's probably what you consider a strict Muslim. He wears the white robes, and he wears the prayer cap, and he keeps a long beard, and he's very strict. But a mutual friend of Ayesha and Khalid decides that the two of them would be a great match, and invites Khalid to come to a lounge where Ayesha is performing her poetry. Now, Khalid gets to the lounge. He doesn't like the atmosphere. Obviously, he doesn't partake in drinking or anything like that. And he just immediately disapproves of the idea of a Muslim woman being in a bar area, as he considers it. So sight unseen, he decides he doesn't want to meet Ayesha. But he does watch her go up and read her poetry. So later on, the two of them are thrown together again when they both have to participate in a youth council to plan a youth conference for the Muslim community. And Ayesha, likewise, decides that she wants nothing to do with Khalid because he's strict, he's judgmental, he's not open to new ideas, and she thinks he's stuffy and she just dismisses him. But the more and more they're thrown together, of course, these prejudices start to wear away, and they may just finally make it after all. So it's just a really fun, what I love most about how Jalaluddin does this, puts this book together is it's not just the central romance between Khalid and Ayesha. All these other characters circling around them are so I thought they were really well developed.
Oh, good.
Some of the villain characters by the end, they start to get a little bit one-dimensional, but that has to happen to the villains, because otherwise they wouldn't be the villains. And there's so many different strands going on here. There's a mistaken identity strand. There's the love against barriers strand of it. Right. There's the younger cousin who runs away at one point. There's a long-lost sister and a mystery surrounding that. But somehow all of these ends are really well tied up by the end. And I think that's really important, that all of the loose ends are tied up in a satisfying way. Right. A lot of people will complain that they don't like the way that, this strand seemed to just disappear conveniently. But she does a really good job of collecting them all together. So again, yeah, I think it's just, there's some moderate heavy content there, but it's overall, I think it's just a really enjoyable read. So yeah.
Good. All right.
So yeah, so moving on, I think we're going to go into the heavier books now that really kind of seriously address the issues that we're discussing today. So why don't you tell us about the first one you brought?
So my next book is actually marketed to middle schoolers. Yeah, if you were to ask any middle schooler if they've read at least one of Alan Gratz's compelling historical fiction novels, they will probably concur that they have. And with Refugee, Gratz originally set out to write a story about just one refugee story with a Jewish background. And he was actually vacationing in Florida with his family, and they were on the beach, and they came across a refugee boat on the beach. And he realized it hasn't just happened in the past, these immigration stories of escape, it's happening current day. So he decided he needed to have multiple characters and multiple narratives. And so he has 3 different 12-year-olds in this novel. The first is Joseph, and his Jewish German family are trying to escape Berlin in the late 1930s. Then you have Isabel, 1994 Cuba, and her family is trying to basically escape the starvation that's afflicting the whole island and the repressive regime of Fidel Castro. And then you have Mahmoud with his Muslim family in Aleppo, Syria, and they were also trying to escape the war-torn city. All 3 teens at different times act, of course, as adults or almost adults because of the potential issues and traumas that are going on with their parents and what's happening as they're trying to escape. Gratz masterfully, initially as you're reading the novel, you think it's just going to be 3 different timelines and 3 different stories. He masterfully is able to connect the dots at the end of the story, where these stories end up converging and intertwining. And he also, at the end, he has in the author's note, he notes, yes, these three main characters are fictitious, but then he goes through, they're all based on true stories. It's all based on actual fact. He talks about, one of the characters, Joseph's father, is actually an amalgam of two real men. And at the very end, there's also a what you can do. So for anybody who's feeling like they want, to take action or to be proactive, it's not just about, reading stories. There's actually something you can do. So it's a very, very powerful read. It's one of the best audiobooks I've listened to, I would say, in the last 5 years. It's 3 different readers. And a lot of the reviews said that it's for ages 9 and up. And I would say reading level-wise, it is for ages 9 and up. But because of some of the content being so tough and so horrific at times, I would say probably 12 and up.
Okay.
And so if you like culturally diverse characters, issue-oriented, multiple perspectives, moving, serious, suspenseful, you're probably going to really enjoy this book. And I'll just read 1 or 2 of the starred reviewed comments. Publishers Weekly says, filled with both tragic loss and ample evidence of resilience, these memorable and tightly plotted stories contextualize and give voice to current refugee crises. And School Library Journal says, this compelling novel will help young people make sense of today's refugee crisis, meant to be read, discussed, and shared widely.
Wow, that sounds really,
really
powerful.
What's your next book, Jessica?
Yeah, my next book actually also deals with children who become too often the unfortunate victim, the most unfortunate victims of these refugee crises. The crisis at the border, which is the one that mine deals with most. Valeria Luiselli, who is the author of Lost Children Archive, actually worked in the immigration courts in New York City. She's a brilliant writer. She's published books before. She's educated at Columbia. She has a PhD in comparative literature. She's brilliant, but she used her Mexican ancestry to help as a translator in the immigration courts, working with migrant children between 2014 and 2015, where there was an unprecedented surge of people coming over the border to claim asylum. And so these children, she would have to administer this test of 40 questions, this survey, to these children in order to determine whether or not they could be granted asylum and citizenship in this country. And the most harrowing part of it, of course, is that they have to have extremely terrible circumstances in order for the U.S. to take them in. So the worst experiences, those with the worst experiences are the ones that are granted. It's harrowing. Wow. So anyway, so she began, when she was working on this, she first thought that she would write a novel, which was the beginning of Lost Children Archive. But as she was writing it, she began to feel that her political views were sort of taking over the narrative too much. Okay. So she stepped back from the novel and she wrote a book, a nonfiction collection of essays called Tell Me How It Ends, which is essays in 40 questions, which is she just retells sort of a meditation on some of these experiences that she's encountered, she's been told. So she publishes that, and that's a really powerful book on its own. Yeah. This one brings in some of those experiences, but creates more of a story out of it. And she refers to it as a book with immigration, not a book about immigration, because there's sort of the narrative of Lost Children Archive is running alongside the narrative of these children lost at the border. Okay. So it starts out with a family, mother, father, boy, and girl, as then they remain nameless until about midway through the book. The father and the mother are sound documentarians, so they work to collect sounds sounds of different environments, or as the boy says, one's a documentarist and one's a documentarian, and the difference is what they do with the sound afterwards, if they collect an archive of it or if they try to create a story, a history out of it. The father has decided that his next project is going to be to record the sounds around the ancestral grounds of the Apache tribe down in southwestern Arizona. And the mother decides that in order for her to be fully invested in this huge journey that they're about to undertake, she needs a project too. So she decides that her project, after the character in the book is also working with migrant children or with migrant families in New York City, and has become friends with a mother who's lost 2 children at the border. And the last time they were seen was when they were crossing the border. So she decides that she's going to make it her mission to record the stories of the children at the border, but also try to search for these 2 girls. So the family embarks on this journey, driving from New York City all the way down to southwestern Arizona. And what's really fascinating is the different encounters that they have along the way. They make various stops in motels and diners, in supermarkets, Walmarts, and things like that. And her meditation on this like American life that we all live, not critical, just meditative. She's just a brilliant writer. The language is just really envelops you. The book is structured so that it's separated by the archival boxes that they bring with them. There's 7 boxes. And so each part of the story is framed by the description of the contents of each of these archival boxes, and the different books that they read along the way, how they entertain themselves in the motel rooms. So it's a story of this family and their little world, alongside, and then interspersed are these chapters from this book of elegies, which is really the story of the children that she wrote about in Tell Me How It Ends. So it's just a brilliant, brilliant book, really. And it's received rave reviews, obviously. It was up for, I think it was longlisted for the Booker Award. Yeah. And then I would say, if you're really interested in complex stories that find unique, inventive ways to talk about tragedy, she never claims to be able to she never claims to have, told the story. She doesn't even know if she should tell the story of these children, if it's her story to tell. But that, that battle that she has within herself is a current that runs through the book too. So I'd liken it maybe to Lincoln in the Bardo, which some people found kind of a frustrating, complex structure, but very inventive and atmospheric, and really creates brings something new to the story.
Sounds incredibly powerful.
It is also.
It's been on my to be read pile, so I think I'm going to move it up.
Yeah.
And,
I'm so glad that I had a real reason to read it, really, and I definitely recommend that everybody do, because I think everyone can get something from it. So moving on, though, I think we've got a couple more that we wanted to share, and now we're venturing into the format. We're changing formats. We're going into graphic novels now, and I think we both agree that graphic novels do an excellent job of telling these stories of tragedy and hardship because of the complement of the text and the visual. So why don't you tell us which one you brought with you?
So what I brought with me is The Best We Could Be, which is an illustrated memoir by Thi Bui. Thi Bui is a former high school teacher, and she's now considers herself a cartoonist and an artist, and she's adjunct professor at the California College of the Arts. And she originally had created an oral history of her family and their escape from Saigon, Vietnam in the 70s, and it was more academic, and it was more like a thesis. And she realized that she really wanted to create something that would be more accessible to the general public and that could tell the story in different ways. And she realized that it wasn't just, and she has very few photos of that time period, of course. So, and she realizes it needed pictures, it needed drawings, and she wasn't an artist.
Yeah.
So over the course of 10 years, she taught herself how to
wow.
draw. And she said she wanted to, from an NPR interview, she says, I wanted to weave the personal and the political and the historical to tell a story of the Vietnam War and all of the things that caused it in a way that I felt like I hadn't seen before. And in my opinion, she's definitely done that. So this is her debut, this illustrated memoir. It alternates back and forth in time between 2005 and the birth of her first child, her son, and her family's escape from South Vietnam after the fall of Saigon. She eloquently and visually shares the hardships of family members being displaced from their home country, the ongoing trauma that resonates through time and place and through generations. The artwork itself is sort of almost sepia-colored base. There's a lot of like brownish and rust colors along with the pen and ink, and it kind of gives a nostalgic feel and kind of reminds me of pictures that I still have from the 1970s when we were growing up. I was very impressed and very moved by the raw honesty that she brought to the novel, and the fact that she interviewed her parents a lot, you know, at the current day, and she doesn't back away from some of the hard issues. And what she shows is that through time and place, that when you encounter trauma in your life, you carry that forward, even if you're away from the actual trauma. And she was trying to say that, you know, you can still try and make amends. You can still try and resolve some of those issues, even though you're still living with that trauma. And that's what she realized. Like, she realized in hindsight that if she hadn't had the birth of her son in conjunction with working on this illustrated memoir, she wouldn't have maybe come to that place of forgiveness with her own parents.
Yeah.
So why read this book? If you like moving, reflective, life-affirming stories that focus on family and relationships, and an immigration story told from the personal, told from an own voice perspective, you're probably going to really appreciate this illustrated memoir. She was also trying to emulate, and I think she did a particularly captivating job, things like Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which is the grandfather of this sort of format of graphic novels, and Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. Booklist gave it a starred review and said, in creatively telling a complicated story with the kind of feeling words alone rarely relay, the best we could do does the very best that comics can do. This is a necessary, ever timely story to share far and wide. And Shelf Awareness, who also gave it a starred review, said, a moving, visually stimulating account of the author's personal story, an insightful look at the refugee experience juxtaposed against Vietnam's turbulent history. It would be very accessible for high schoolers, and I think it would be very accessible for adults that want to consider an alternative book club pick.
Yeah. I think more book clubs should get into the graphic novels. Absolutely, give it a shot. You know,
Exactly.
It's a powerful and very absorbing experience. So we don't have much time for my last one. I did bring with me Threads by Kate Evans, and it's all about her journey volunteering in the Calais jungle, the refugee camps in Calais, France. Very incredible. Her drawings are both raw and appreciative of the humanity and the community. Well, that's about all the time we have today. Please check the library catalog for any of the books you see here. We're going to post this episode to our website so that you can, and then we'll list the different links to the different books from there. And we hope you'll be able to join us next time. Oh, and our next live Friday Fiction in the library is on October 18th, Friday at 10:30 a.m. So join us then if you can. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
We did it again.